Isn't it amazing how many things there are in the world? There are chairs and bugs and bats and trees and Kentucky bluegrass and monkeys. Oh, hey, there's a French fry and a book. I love books. Even ourselves, our sense of self, our mind, these seem like things as well. And there are plenty of other things too, I assume. But what if, one day, some weirdo philosopher came along and said that all these things aren't actually things. They're processes. Like running. Or swimming. Swimming is an interaction that occurs between a person and their environment, not a singular thing you can point to. We think of items like chairs as isolated, stable things we can point to, substances, nouns. But what if things like chairs were actually interactions, like swimming? What if there were no nouns? What if there were only verbs? Well, that's just one example of how philosopher Mark Johnson might radically reconceptualize our understanding of human bodies and our relationship to our environments. He might just come along and interrupt your day by reminding you that all the things in the world aren't exactly what they appear. They are, in fact, much more tangled and complex than we tend to realize. So who is this Mark Johnson guy anyway? If you ever happen to find yourself in the philosophy department at the University of Oregon, then you're probably just a stone's throw away from Mark Johnson. But please don't throw any stones. This is where he has been teaching for more than 3 decades. He is now Professor of Philosophy and Philip H. Knight Professor of Liberal Arts and Sciences. In addition to his prestigious teaching career, Johnson is also well known for rocking the worlds of metaphor and aesthetics. Johnson first made waves in the early 1980s when he co-authored a book by the name of Metaphors We Live By. His co-author was cognitive linguist George Lakoff, with whom Johnson would go on to have many decades worth of collaborations. Johnson and Lakoff were some of the first thinkers to challenge the idea that the meaning behind symbolic and metaphorical language came merely from cognition. This is, in other words, the idea that metaphorical phrases like "your words are illuminating" are mere abstractions of thought. Instead, Johnson and Lakoff argued that all symbolic language gained its meaning through our bodies and our interactions with environments. This idea sparked an entire field of metaphor studies in cognitive linguistics that has since been researched in basically every academic field under the sun. This work played a major role ushering embodiment into grander intellectual debates. Ultimately, it's not too surprising that Mark Johnson would be a key player in revolutionizing the field of study. Since his early days of learning, Johnson wanted to explore ideas that really mattered to people. He was born in Kansas City, Missouri in 1949 and went on to get his BA in philosophy and English at the University of Kansas. His time in Kansas allowed him to explore philosophy in a way that felt meaningful to him. It was there that he got to ask big questions about meaning, morals, spirituality, and our place in the world. When Johnson then went on to get his MA and PhD at the University of Chicago, he found himself studying increasingly abstract ideas, many of which seemed completely removed from concrete human experience.
I ended up at getting accepted to graduate school at Chicago, and it was like I didn't know where I was. I was on another planet, you know. Back at Kansas, we've been talking about meaning and where do moral values come from, and, you know, questions about freedom and responsibility and all. And at Chicago, it was like, we're talking about Quine and referential opacity and, the indeterminacy of translation and all this abstract stuff. And I felt like completely out of it. It just seemed disembodied and like not engaged.
So, it was early in Johnson's career that he decided he wanted to bring philosophy back down to earth. He wanted to make sure that his career revolved around things that made a difference to people. His approach to philosophy would take as a starting point human bodies, human experience. It was philosophy in the flesh, which would later become the title of another book he co-authored with Lakoff. As Johnson put it, we are born into the world as creatures of the flesh, and it is through our bodily perceptions, movements, emotions, and feelings that meaning becomes possible and takes the forms it does. Johnson found himself inspired by the work of American philosophers like Charles Sanders Peirce, William James, and especially John Dewey, all of whom are associated with a school of thought called American pragmatism. Johnson felt an immediate kinship with John Dewey, who saw with brilliant clarity the importance of human bodies and experience in everything we do in life.
I'm still trying to come to grips. I find traces of this keep popping up in my own thinking, and sometimes when I read Dewey, I see how profoundly he understands what a non-dualistic view would look like, and he's kind of reminding me, no, don't fall back into these received ways of thinking.
With all this in mind, that Johnson then turned his sights to the field of aesthetics. Johnson conceived of aesthetics as a broad, encompassing approach to human meaning-making. Aesthetics is traditionally just considered the study of beauty. In the hands of Johnson, it is a dynamic, multitudinous approach to human experience. It isn't merely about beauty, it's about how we understand ourselves and the world around us as viscerally imbued with meaning and purpose. Johnson fleshed out these ideas in his groundbreaking 2007 book, The Meaning of the Body: Aesthetics of Human Understanding. Here, Johnson argued that aesthetics should be the basis of all philosophy. For the last decade and a half, Johnson has continued to plumb the depths of human meaning-making. His newest projects bring neuroscience to the fore, looking at how empirical studies can put flesh on the bones of an embodied approach to philosophical discourse. Equally exciting, his ideas on embodiment have been gaining traction in a wide range of fields, from cognitive science to psychology to literary studies and beyond. Ultimately, Johnson is an exciting and radical thinker, someone who has challenged our intuitions about who and what we are. By taking Johnson's lead, our bodies are no longer seen as isolated entities, somehow separate from our environments. Our minds cannot float free of our bodies. Human consciousness cannot be unraveled from its corporeal entanglements. It is our brains, our nervous systems, our bones, muscles, and viscera that make us who we are. More to the point, it is also the ways in which our bodies interact with our environments that make us who we are. We are what our environments are, and vice versa. Ongoing, dynamic, entangled interactions between organism and environment. To see us otherwise is an exercise in abstraction.